She thought it was just another day at work, scrubbing floors, picking up after people who never saw her worth. But one cruel remark from a billionaire would change everything. He mocked her, laughed at her pain, and made a promise he never thought she could keep. "Fix it, and I'll marry you." What happened next left him stunned and exposed a truth about arrogance, power, and the strength of a woman he underestimated. Did he really think her dignity was for sale? Or was this the moment he realized he had just challenged the wrong woman? Amara was used to being invisible. Every morning before dawn, she tied her hair back, slipped into her faded maid's uniform, and walked through the gates of the mansion where wealth dripped from every corner. Marble floors, chandeliers sparkling like stars, and parties where billionaires raised glasses to fortunes she could never dream of. Yet in all that splendor, no one looked at her, not really. She was the shadow that polished their shoes, the hands that cleaned their mess, the quiet figure they barely noticed. But Amara noticed everything. The way they laughed at jokes about people like her. The way security followed her in luxury stores, even when she wore her uniform straight from work. She kept her head down, swallowing the sting of humiliation because she needed this job. It wasn't just about her. It was about sending money home to her little brother, about surviving in a world that constantly reminded her of her place. Still, Amara carried something they couldn't see, an unshakable resilience. She believed that dignity wasn't defined by wealth or skin color, and though life had been unfair, she refused to let bitterness consume her. What she didn't know was that one man, the owner himself, would soon shatter her fragile sense of safety. His words, careless and cruel, would cut deeper than any insult she had endured before. And with a single challenge disguised as a joke, he would ignite a chain of events that no one in that glittering mansion could have ever imagined. The turning point came on a glittering evening when the mansion overflowed with guests. Men in tailored suits and women in shimmering gowns filled the ballroom, their laughter bouncing off crystal walls. Amara, like always, moved quietly among them, carrying trays, cleaning spills, collecting glasses as if she were invisible. But to the billionaire who owned it all, she wasn't invisible that night. She was his entertainment. With a smirk curling across his face, he called her out in front of everyone. "Fix the chandelier chain," he sneered, pointing to the golden fixture high above. "And maybe I'll marry you." The crowd erupted, with laughter, their cruel eyes piercing her as if she were part of some twisted game. Her cheeks burned, her hands trembled, but she forced herself to stand still. She knew this wasn't just a joke. It was a reminder of the unspoken rules. She was poor, she was black, and in their world, she was beneath them. The humiliation clawed at her chest, but Amara refused to break. Instead, she tilted her chin ever so slightly, as if silently telling him, "I hear you, and I will remember this." That night, she returned to her small apartment, the laughter of the wealthy echoing in her ears. She should have cried. She should have let the weight crush her. But something inside her had shifted. His words weren't just an insult, they were a challenge. And for the first time, Amara felt the fire to rise against it. In the days that followed, whispers spread among the staff. Some mocked her quietly, others pitied her. But Amara kept working harder, longer, sharper. Each polished surface, each folded sheet, each repaired corner of the house becoming proof that she was more than their cruel jokes. Still, the cruelty didn't stop. She overheard guests wondering aloud why people like her were allowed in such a place. Security guards eyed her as if her presence was suspicious. And yet, she endured. Because she knew what they didn't. She had a plan. One mistake could cost her everything, but every insult only fueled her determination. She refused to be defined by their arrogance. She refused to bow to their laughter. And while the billionaire enjoyed mocking her in public, he had no idea what Amara was preparing behind the scenes, something that would force him to see her not as a maid, not as a shadow, but as a woman who would no longer be silenced. The question wasn't whether she could survive their cruelty. The real question was, what would happen when the joke turned against him? The night of reckoning came when the billionaire hosted yet another lavish gala. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, music thundered through the hall, and once again, Amara was expected to blend into the shadows. But this time, she didn't. She had spent weeks in silence, fixing what he mocked her for, repairing what no one thought she could touch. While others laughed, she studied. While they scorned, she worked. And on this night, when the guests gathered under that same golden chandelier, the moment arrived. The billionaire, smug as ever, spotted her and smirked. "Well, did you fix it?" His voice dripped with mockery, expecting her to falter. The room turned to stare, hungry for another cruel show. But Amara didn't lower her gaze. With steady hands, she reached up, tugged the switch, and the chandelier blazed to life. Light poured over the hall, brighter, stronger, flawless. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The very thing he said she could never do, she had done. Perfectly. The billionaire's smirk vanished. His jaw tightened. The laughter that once echoed now fell silent, replaced by stunned whispers. For the first time, the power balance shifted. But it wasn't just about the chandelier. It was about her dignity, her resilience, her refusal to be broken by their cruelty. And yet, instead of praise, the billionaire's face twisted in rage. He couldn't bear being proven wrong by the woman he had humiliated. He barked orders, tried to belittle her again, desperate to claw back his power. But the room had changed. The guests no longer laughed. They watched him, watched her, and realized who truly held the strength in that moment. Amara stood taller than ever, her silence louder than his fury. The question hung heavy in the air. Would he honor his own cruel words, or reveal to everyone just how shallow and cowardly he really was? The billionaire never answered her challenge. He didn't apologize, didn't laugh, didn't even try to cover his shame. He simply stood frozen, exposed under the very light he had once mocked her for. In that moment, everyone in the room saw the truth. His wealth couldn't shield him from his arrogance, and her strength could not be ignored. For Amara, it wasn't about marriage or about winning his approval. It was about reclaiming her dignity in a world determined to strip it away. She walked away from that mansion with her head held high, not because he gave her respect, but because she proved she didn't need his permission to have it. Her story echoes far beyond that glittering ballroom. It speaks to every person who has ever been laughed at, underestimated, or pushed aside because of the color of their skin. It is a reminder that racism often hides behind so-called jokes, behind careless words that wound deeper than most people realize. But when confronted with resilience, with courage, with truth, it cracks. Amara's victory was not just hers. It belonged to everyone who has been told they are less, only to rise and show they are so much more. And yet we must ask ourselves, how many more Amaras will it take before society stops mocking, stops belittling, stops dehumanizing people based on race or status? How many more humiliations must be endured before dignity is recognized as a human right, not a privilege? This story may have ended with Amara's quiet triumph, but the larger fight is far from over. So the question remains, for you, for all of us, will we stay silent in the face of cruelty, or will we finally choose to stand, to speak, and to change?